All right. Um, so, so Nick, I think it'd be really great to talk about this approach to this new revision of your work, Mulch Awareness Month. For those who don't know, when we originally premiered this work on June 16th, it was very much a through composed work, um, and really this process of that Nick went through of kind of deconstructing and kind of making this more of almost like a cell based and like choose your own adventure style composition. I think would be really interesting to kind of talk about that process and what was it what did it look like before and what does it look like now?
hmm Yeah, exactly. Before it was very much through composed. I think that a good way to think of it is um, the the initial version was basically one potential outcome of many that could happen when dealing with the kind of what I call source materials of the
Mm.
piece. So basically, and I'm sure this answer will answer other questions. So sorry about that, but yeah, basically, I, I, I approached I developed like all of like the content, like the cells, so to speak, via improvising. I'll improvise, record, listen back, sift through the stuff that I liked and the stuff that I didn't like, and then kind of like narrow it down from there, and then really pick out like little small parts that almost like building blocks, I guess, that could be easily assembled, and um, and that's kind of my way of it's my approach to, I guess, creating some sort of cohesiveness and theme development, and it's something that I also like to explore sometimes in improvisation, like free improvisation, particularly solo free improvisation. Um, Use it like developing over the course of a set these kinds of this like bank of sounds basically.
Hmm.
Um, so the initial version was completely through composed, and it is just an assembly of these source materials, and yeah, I think that I, I like that version for what it is. I think that my main issue with it is that um, I just don't. If there are going to be technically an infinite amount of ways that it can go, I don't want to be the arbiter of good taste and just like completely notate just one single way version of it. And as a performer and as an improviser, that's not at all, you know, uh, really aligned with what I do,
Hmm.
and what I believe in. So and for you as an improviser, like I also don't want to just like completely throw away that entire skill set. So um, yeah, I mean, basically the way it is now is that it still is kind of like cellular.
Hmm.
There are like fragments that kind of recur. Um, but the difference is, and it's funny. I think if at any point anyone hears both versions back to back, it would be crazy. But a big difference is that there are a lot of the fragments are meant to be uh, performed, explored, experimented, improvised with, uh, like in and of themselves.
Hmm.
Like one fragment should be explored and developed into its own kind of thing, as opposed to playing one as written, then moving on to another one as written.
Hmm.
And so the piece can have, and I think I wrote this in the program in the performance notes. It can have, it can be, a minute long, or it can be several hours long, technically.
Right.
Um, and I have suggested ways of moving through the material,
Hmm.
but it's really just a suggestion, you know. I don't. Yeah, I guess like I only really believe in full control if I'm doing like a solo set
Right.
or something.
Right. Right.
But as someone who improvises with other people, and then composing for improvisers, I'm not really. Uh, I'm just trying to create an environment for the performer to explore. I'm
Right.
not really trying to create something that I think is perfect that should then be fulfilled and reproduced exactly as it is, and
Right.
you know. So yeah, that's I think that this new version is much more aligned with who I actually am as an artist, and the thing is that always has been the case. Like I took classical composition lessons back in starting in oh gosh maybe 2016,
Hmm.
and I had already been composing, but I just wanted to get better at notation and writing for types of instrumentations that I hadn't been composing for prior. And I was studying at that time with Missy Mazzoli, and the first things that I brought in were immediately so much more square and kind of small, like thinking, I guess, or small thought of compared to what I was actually doing prior, because the whole framework of classical composition, or really just through composition, that kind of just imposed this set of biases and this set of arbitrary rules on me.
Interesting.
And so I think that subconsciously I was very much just conforming to this idea of what through composition should be,
Hmm.
and limiting myself in many ways, and writing stuff that I didn't recognize as my own really, and all of that stuff was like really just like completely through composed. And I got a lot out of those lessons and a lot out of that experience, for sure. Um, and now I'm in a place where I, I mean, pretty much everything I write is for improvisers, you know, and improvisers that I know.
Hmm.
And so this first version was really an outlier of what I was of what I am and have been doing for the past several years. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's attributed to being like completely isolated and just not in the normal flow of artistic life.
Mhm.
But yeah, this new version is much more aligned with what I actually do.
Interesting. I mean, I mean, would you be able to like what was going through your head kind of in that first version, that kind of made you feel, right that way?
Sorry, that made me feel what?
Like inclined to kind of go in that direction, initially.
Yeah. I think part of it is that most of the things I've done as a composer have been part of my own initiative,
Hmm.
and so when being commissioned, it's kind of like it's this. Frankly, it's just not something that I'm used to really,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so it kind of puts me in this in I think that it put me in this place of like um, feeling like I'm fulfilling like a task or something, which isn't at all um, how you or Ross or Will at all presented it to me in any way. Um, but it's just something that I'm quite frankly not very used to,
Sure, sure.
and so I think that you know I just took it sort of at this like surface level value of like compose a solo bass piece, and that's as someone who is a solo or who does solo bass playing and improvising, uh, for some reason I just immediately went to this place of like, okay, this is like a separate part of my practice, but it's really not. And I think just because the context in which the piece came up, because that was so different than what I usually do,
Mm-hmm.
that I musically approached it differently also.
Of course, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. Um, but in this case, I felt that, and now I feel that that version was, yeah, it just, it wasn't as full of an embodiment of what I do, or as full of an exploration
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I want to explore as much as it could have been.
Sure. And I think, I mean, it just, you have these kind of pillar movements, right, with Roman numerals. Um, but even in that, we have kind of going back and forth between the two of them, right, the three of them, sorry. Um, there's all these arrows that kind of go back and forth between two and
Mm-hmm.
three, and one and three, um, which I think is really cool and kind of gives, the performer really an ability to not only, you know, have their own take, but really to kind of create their own structure within this,
Mm-hmm.
which is really fun for the performer and also really interesting because um, in kind of a more improvised context, you kind of get that kind of every piece, every iteration of this piece is going to be slightly different, right? Um, which is I think really fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and I would actually even go as far to say that it would be very different
Mm,
every iteration. I mean, not to be like presumptuous and just assume that like would be a widely performed thing, of
right.
course. But I mean, it's again like all of the even the arrows are still just suggestions of what I think would sound good. Um, but if you're performing it, I think that um, yeah, I really just want it to be like a playground to explore and to experiment, and I think that it provides a good amount of structure and a good amount of material such that the piece sounds like the piece.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there is there are so many ways of going about it, and you could play any part of it and kind of go down your own path and create something wildly different from situation to situation, and that's very purposeful because I don't think that we should necessarily uh, modify, or rather I don't think that the length or just overall feeling that a piece of music evokes, I feel like that can be a curse
Hmm.
as much as a blessing. Um, Depending on the length of the piece, you could be excluded from many programs, for example, or many venues or environments. And so I want this piece to be flexible. I want it to be the kind of thing that can can react and that the piece can improvise. And when I say improvise in this case, I mean in the more general sense of the word, with making do with what is at hand. I want the piece to be able to do that in as many situations as possible.
Hmm.
So if you have to do a 15-minute set, it can do that. If you have to do like a 3-minute piece for some kind of like marathon, for example,
Right.
it can also do that. Um, and so yeah, I think that just as much agency as I can give to the performer while retaining the identity of it, the better.
I think why don't we maybe go for and try to talk through this piece a little bit, and I can play.
Great, yeah.
The first thing that I would love to kind of talk through with you um, is this 2.5 integral. So in the program notes you talk about it as um, in this case one quarter tone sharper than a semitone. So so we're looking at two half note kind of figures. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with like a tremolo marking and with some dynamics, and it says the M 2.5. So why don't you just talk me and also the audience a little bit?
Specifically on the intervallic part of it, or just
Yeah.
overall
So,
that?
so is it kind of is it a glissando kind of figure that we're looking at?
Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry. So yeah, it's kind of hard to see. I see now. So yeah, that is a glissando,
Okay.
and as are all of the other ones you'll see. Um, two
Oh,
point five.
I got it. I got it. Sorry.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you're just glissing down that much, roughly. Um, 2.5, yeah, like a quarter tone, uh, hot, sharper than a minor second. That is, of course, just an approximation. The point of it is so that it should be an audible lowering that is not quite just a semitone, basically.
Mm.
Um, the half note is somewhat arbitrary, um, but it's sort of like what I figured is visually long enough to create this like audible sense of the swell, really,
Mm.
and the pitch change. Um, but anything, and I think this is in the performance notes, but anything that is not specified can and should be varied. So the specific pitches you decide on, the speed of the half notes, um, you know, that should all be kind of varied.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so in the case of this box, you're just exploring the box. You play it, and then see what you could do. See play it again and again, and see what you can do with that, and see what interests you within those parameters.
Great. And that actually I was just about to ask. So it's kind of repeat at your own um, you know discretion kind of a thing.
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Some of the boxes have more of this kind of like built-in level of density and sparseness.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just kind of do it at your discretion. Um, the way I do it, the way I would do it is a very kind of inherently personal way, as it would be with anyone playing the piece. Um, but the only correct way to do it is to do is just if what's written is done, and then beyond that, it's at your discretion.
Hmm. Great. And so then just another thing I think we should talk about so is the fingered string and open string. So what I've been looking at that, and so that
Wait,
um,
sorry. So, where are we?
oh, I'm sorry. It's just so it's either the in the first movement either the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth cell there, and then also the ninth, I believe. So we have the A, and then the G, G. So is that kind of
Hmm.
like the open string and then like a unison pitch? Is that what?
Right. So yeah. In that case, so anything in a box means that it should be experimented and repeated and
Okay.
improvised with, not repeated verbatim, but just like improvised with. So in the case of those, it means that play it as written the first time and then get away from it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And the bottom pitch is the open string.
Got it.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
So in terms of playing it and then getting away from it, so what would be like an example of that? So kind of if I would, so so the bottom note's always the open string. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So it's like, yeah. It's always like, in this case it would be like an octave, a
okay.
swelled up octave, and then like the next time you do it could be like a swelled up like minor-ish third or something, or
Okay.
sixth or whatever. I guess not third
I
probably.
see. So it's like kind of just experimenting on open strings and then an added fingering note, but we're starting on that octave.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Um, so with all that being said, I'm wondering, what if I just kind of go for it and
I think you should just go for it.
yeah, and
Let's just
I'll
see.
and I'll try the first couple of maybe either up to the end of that first line there to the grand pause, or I'll keep going and see how that.
Sure, yeah. Whatever you, yeah. Anything's cool with me.
What if I actually stop? I'll stop right there just to give people a taste.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was great. Yeah. I love how you treated that the box before the staff notation because yeah, you kind of like you did more overlapping of those ideas than I expected, and that was really
Hmm.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was great. Basically, yeah. So yeah, some, or I guess the first box, you did not repeat at all, which is an option, of course,
Mhm.
and and then the others you explored to like other different depths,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, yeah,
I think it gives a lot of freedom to kind of take either kind of less adventurous step in interpretation or kind of really push the boundaries of what you've written, um,
hmm
which is I think really what we need. I mean, you think about the kind of conservatory schooling and practice, and I think it's kind of important to push past and expand those boundaries. Um, and I feel like this piece is going to do that brilliantly. Um,
thank you.
kind
Yeah,
of.
that's the hope.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just responding, acknowledging what you said.
um, in that case, I'm wondering if we could kind of address, kind of in that vein. Um, I think a piece like this that kind of breaks a lot of um, boundaries in classical music, and especially what we would consider kind of the Western art canon. Um, it to you, is this for you like a political art piece? Um, and is art in and of itself, political? And do you consider yourself political? A political artist is what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not inadvertently or explicitly political. Um, I do think that I do think of all art as political in one way or another. And obviously, if everything is political, one could easily say that nothing is political. The fact that improvisation is so important to me, it's like an incredibly complex series of like a complex chain of events of my entire upbringing that I could like draw from the beginning of like being uh, uh, what's it called, like an elementary school classical cellist, being bullied in orchestras and dealing with like racial discrimination there, creating all of these chain reactions up until like where I am now. You can trace anything back to any kind of situation that you're born into that you have no control over. And I mean, in the most general sense of the word politics, that's yeah. I mean, yeah, like of course, the art we create is going to be inherently political. You know?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, of course.
Um, I think it's definitely important. I think for especially um, white classical musicians to kind of be aware of these kind of, I think, choices and barriers, and also um, kind of as you're saying, kind of just turns in your life that sometimes don't exist for everybody, and it's important to be aware of those things.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about classical music, and we talk about contemporary music, and we talk about um, improvised music as well.